Never leave home without your tire iron. That's my rule of thumb. And this little metaphor I hope we get to later, it's in the shape of an X. I've been invited to share with you 3 adventure stories, a series of adventure stories, that may help make sense of this idea, learning dangerously. Makes sense for you and also makes sense for me. Such is the nature of storytelling. These are 3 stories about holes, progressively smaller holes. And the first hole is right here in Saudi Arabia. It's about 4 hours from here. And it is the Waba Crater. And if you have not been to the Waba Crater, you absolutely have to go. It's magnificent. It is not an impact crater like from a meteorite. It is not a caldera crater like at the top of Kilimanjaro or Mount Fuji, a volcano. It's an implosion crater, which is unbelievable. Imagine a lake of lava, huge lake of lava that hardens, then the top crust pops because there's a bubble of gas that has emerged. Think of a beach. Go down to the beach, into the wet sand area, dig a hole, take your birthday balloon, bury it in the sand, smooth it over, pack it down, and then take a ballpoint pen or your pen and pop it. Whoomp! Magnificent crater. Extremely straight up and down sides. That's an implosion crater. That's our pain point as a Boy Scout troop. Because here we go to Waba Crater, and you can see it yourself. Look at those incredible sides. The reason it's a pain point for us as a Boy Scout troop is that we camp in this glorious recess down on the other side. Unbelievable. You can drive a 4-wheel drive barely down, and you can park your tents right on the edge. Unbelievable. Best place to camp in Saudi Arabia that I know of. Problem is, the path down is over here. All the way around. So that presents a challenge to boys in the Boy Scout troop. Got to hike all the way around in the heat, then down a precarious rock stairway carved into this side of the crater, to the bottom and see the salt pan, then reverse it all the way out. That's the problem. So the beginning of this story really is about a solution to that problem that boys discovered. There we are in the rim. And this little scenario opens with me kneeling by my tent, which was that one right over there. And Boy Scout leaders are supposed to be in control. Well, I was not in control. I was kneeling down, and I'm wrestling with the zipper of my tent. I cannot get it open. I'm like, come on. And I hear the voices of 2 boys. Mr. Tennis, Mr. Tennis. What? We found a way down. What? We found a way down. I said, really? Show me. And so I marched through the camp around this rim, and sure enough, there was a crack in the rock. But it looked just like it went about 6 feet, and that was it. Then out into space. But the kids said, see at that crack? If he turns right, it becomes like a trail. So I asked them, well, is it safe? They said, yeah, it's safe. Gibran went down there. Jamie went down there. I said, what? But did they come out? They said, oh, yeah, they're over by the fire pit. I said, wow. And then, of course, I have to prepare for what I call the collective adventure challenge. You can predict it yourself. Can we go down this way? And what I find with collective adventure questions is it starts doing the math in your head all on its own. Scoutmaster math sounds like this. What about footwear? What about water? What about sunscreen? And most important, what about terrain and the abilities of my scouts who may want to go down this way? So we're doing the math, and somehow the exuberance of these scouts won out. This was their achievement. 6 of them. Amazing effort. All different body types, all different abilities, all different ages. Made it down into the crater, and this is what, when they turned around, they saw. And you could see in their faces, they felt they'd done something astonishing. It was fabulous, both for them and for the troop. It started with this. That's their collective adventure question. Can we go down this way? We hear questions like that all the time as scoutmasters, as parents, as educators, all the time. But the story really doesn't begin there at the crater. The story really didn't begin for me until 2 weeks later when we circled up as a Boy Scout troop in the gym. And I typically will kneel down even though that doesn't really help because I'm still taller than everybody. But I'll kneel down and I ask the kids, so, reflecting back on our time at Waba Crater, does anybody have a significant learning moment, a lesson, a high achievement piece that they want to share? Because some of you didn't go. Ari raises his hand and says, Mr. Tennis, I'm just thankful that they found a new way down for us. You have to know Ari, he's a gentleman and a generous soul to the end. Fabulous comment. Killian raised his hand, younger scout. He said, you know, it was great. We had to watch where we put our feet. We had to space ourselves out so we were safe. And we had to call. We called to each other if rocks started to slip. But we all made it down. And we all had fun. Now that sounds like a mundane conversation, unless you know 7th, 8th, and 9th grade boys. Notice the language. We watched where we put our feet. We kept spaces between ourselves to be safe. We called. We all made it, and we had fun. As an educator, I've learned that middle school children grow up in what I call the mirror years. Every waking moment of their lives in middle school is devoted to questions. This mirror idea. How do I look? Was that a dorky thing to say? What do I have for lunch? Will that be embarrassing to show off to anybody? Are my shoes too new? Are my shoes too old? Will I ever become tall? Constantly around the first person, I and me, and look at this. So when I see a middle school boy in 5 sentences all together, talking collectively about the collective good, that stops me in my tracks. That gets my attention. Hole number 2, no crater too small. This is a magnificent little crater. You'll get to see it in just a second. It starts, the setting is in the elementary school here at KAUST, and it starts with walking through the courtyard, the cement courtyard, and feeling a tug at your clothes. Tug, tug, tug. And I look down, and it's several students from Amber Hutton's 2nd grade class. And they're saying, Mr. Tennis, Mr. Tennis. And I said, what? Do we have permission to dig up our rock? We're supposed to ask you. Mrs. Hutton says we have to ask you. Do we have permission to dig up our rock? I thought, well, I don't know. Show me what you got. So I walked over there, and I looked down, and I saw that they'd uncovered a piece of, well, it's not really a rock. It was kind of aggregate cement rubble from a construction leftover, but we'll call it a rock. And I started to do the math. The principal in me, the operations manager in me, the teacher in me starts to do the math. Will it be safe? What will other people notice? Will other kids start digging up rocks? Will the playground fall over? I do the math, but you cannot say no to 2nd graders who are that enthusiastic. They're unbelievable. So I said, why not? You have my permission if it's okay with your teacher. And so they went after it. They dug up their rock. There is their collective adventure question. Notice it's so 2nd grade. They're not asking, may we possibly dig up this rock? Or can we try and dig up this rock a little bit? No, they're going to dig up the rock. They're 2nd graders. They're very straight. They just want to know if it's okay to go ahead. So there they are. There's their crater. Fabulous. Baby Waba was only about this big. And there's the rock that they lifted all by themselves. Thing weighed a ton. Notice their language. But before we get to their language, I had to look at this slide again because there's an element of collective adventures. I have this sort of criteria set in my head that this speaks to so clearly. 10 times out of 10, if you give children a chance to dig up their own rock or play on a plastic slide imported from somewhere else, they will choose to dig up their own rock. Whether they're filthy, dusty, tired, thirsty, that's what they will do. You give kids choice about adventure, they will jump on it. They started with this. This is their collective adventure question. And look at their language. They stood there so proud. Look at what we did. We did it all by ourselves. And when I asked them if I could take a picture, they said, we can lift it all together. Absolutely amazing. That's 2nd graders. If you meet 2nd graders in the hall on your own, they'll come up, they'll tug on your pocket, and they'll say, Mr. Tennis, look at my shoes. Look at my new lunchbox. And then the second grader will push them to the side and say, but I have a lunchbox, and I have shoes. And it's all I. But through collective endeavors, with some sense of adventure, in their view, look at the language change. It's transformative. Here are some of the ingredients that I see as belonging in a collective venture, and you might have your own. One is there usually a fear element, an unknown element, something new, sort of adventure. The second is it's hard. There's a challenge involved. There's something that takes some effort. This is the choice piece we were talking about earlier. And it's an internal choice. It's not an external choice. It's not the rules person, the hierarchy person, the boss person. It is an internal choice element. And this is crucial. It can't be a collective adventure, in my view, unless it involves outreach. We, a sense of we, and a resulting citizenship factor. Hole number 3. Tiny hole, where it's shrinking right down. And high impact factor. I had to include that line. Don't you love that? So the setting for this is quite a while ago. It's a busy interstate. It's I-5 north from Seattle. 4 lanes at this point. And I'm driving in a station wagon, and my young son is in the seat next to me. And we're driving along. It's quite busy. And the first thing I notice, strangely, the exact same color and make of car is off to the side of the road. It looks like my car, and I had an unusual car. And as we passed it, I noticed, oh, there's a woman standing by the car. And then as I was now past it, I looked back and I saw, and the back left tire is flat. So I've got my own internal collective adventure question. So I'm asking myself, okay, I better do the math here. And I said, okay, I'm in the left lane. How much time will it take for me in this traffic to move over to the right lane, all the way across, then pull onto the shoulder, and can I safely back up and help this woman? The math said no. I would be 3/4 of a mile past her at that point. Not safe to back up on the shoulder. So math number 2 kicks in. Okay, would it be crazy to turn around? That would involve getting over into lane 1, waiting for an exit, turning across the freeway over the bridge, 10 miles south, to the next exit, turn around again, and come north. Came out somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. And I've got to ask myself, will she still be there? Is it worth doing? I'm still doing the math. And my little son next to me comes up with a collective adventure question. Are we going to go back? Instantly took the exit. Made the loop. All the way down, 25 minutes later, we pulled up. Amazingly, no one had stopped to yet help her. Would have been fine if they had, but they hadn't. And we fixed the tire. And to me, I thought of my son and the learning, in this case, somewhat dangerously, and maybe her view if we pull over, but the learning and what it would have happened had we carried on. What would he have learned? He would have learned, in my view, this is what went through my head, he would have learned that good fathers, the very best fathers, because that's what children think of their parents, that's what they think of you, best fathers see a lady with a problem on a highway, they keep driving. And I couldn't handle that. Just this statement turned us around, and we were able to help. But is that really a collective adventure? Because it's just the 2 of us. Well, was there something unknown? Absolutely, for him. Whiting had never changed a tire before. Fear? She was probably scared to death having a 6'8" person pull up near dark and try to help her out. I know that feeling. I've had people run from me when I do that. Challenge? Yeah, all the logistical challenges of being an hour or so late to where I needed to go, getting off the road, turning around, all those logistical pieces to it. Was it a choice issue? Absolutely, it was a choice issue. This was 100% a choice issue. It was staring at us. It was our play to make. Outreach? Was there a citizenship factor outreach? No. Not until the moment that we pulled over, got out of our car, and went up to her and said, looks like you have a problem, can we help? Not until the connection. Then absolutely, there was a citizenship factor. Outreach, from I to we being the 3 of us. Now I have to stop for a second because this is our title, and I have to be very honest. Some time ago when I was having these stories swirl around in my head, and try to make sense of them, I received a very difficult phone call. The phone call came from my sister-in-law. And she said, Cabby, your son, the same one who had been in the seat, now grown up, has been electrocuted. And you can imagine. She went on to say, thankfully, but the medical technicians on site think he's going to be okay. Now I have to share with you that it's very hard for me to think of these words and reconcile that picture. I just don't know how I can do it. There is him being hugged, or he's giving a hug to the medical technician that went out and pulled him down. He'd been visiting a family out in the country, and there'd been an enormous snowstorm. It had collapsed roofs. It had knocked over trees. It had knocked over play sets in backyards. Huge winter storm. And he, with a friend, had asked if he could borrow a saw and go out and cut the limb off of a tree that was threatening to smash their treehouse in the back. And they'd said yes, and had given him the saw. And he climbed up there, and something about the storm and the branches had electrified, high voltage electrified, a guy wire, a guy rope to a pole. As he reached out to brace himself, he got fried. Completely lights out, burned right through his gloves and through his hands. So I don't have an answer to that. It floats around in my head as a very significant stopping point. If I did have an answer to that, it would be in two questions. The first question, there he is up high. That's a few minutes probably before he turned around and saw the limb and got fried. The first question, though, is to him, Whiting, will you continue to go out and help people in that way, ask if you can help, borrow saws, cut down trees, through the rest of your life? And I think the answer is yes. So that's helpful to me. The second question is citizenship, this is to me, this is the academic question, is citizenship learned through collective adventures, through, in fact, dangerous learning? Is it worth preparing for? And if it is, then I can reconcile Whiting getting down off that ladder. If it answers, collective adventures and learning agencies, if it answers to our culture of fear, and it is a concern, a sense of isolation in our communities, in our schools, in our homes, and selfishness. I'm not talking about selfishness of second graders or seventh graders or eighth graders. I'm talking about selfishness of us. The individual level, the family level, the community level, the national level, selfishness. If engaging in collective adventures in community moves us in answer to some of these things, then I'm all for it. So how does one do it? How do you make baby steps towards being a person that sort of thinks of this stuff and acts on it? Well, I've got some silly ones. I've got in my wallet, if I can get it out, I've got in my wallet 3 little things. They get me into kind of trouble because they call me the MacGyver kid. And here they are up front. They are a guitar pick, a safety pin, and a Band-Aid. So that's got outreach to me in a miniature way written all over it. I also have a sticker on the back of my phone. Looks like that. It's just when I look at it, it reminds me that when I get on an elevator, I need to not look at my phone. I need to talk to people by name, as embarrassing or fearful as that might be. And finally, I keep these things in my car. And I'll mention this quickly. This tire iron, yes, it's something I can help with. It's the same kind of tool that we used there on the screen. Cars that we buy today have a single lug wrench. Think about that. We purchase something that forces us to be by ourselves, independent. We can only fix our car. If one mentally, and then follows it up with an action, purchases something like this, for me, I know that the blue is my car, but these are the cars of other people that might need them. And even if I don't know how to use it or don't have the strength to use it, it's in my car, and it's mentally reminding me what it's there for. It might inspire me in other ways. Physical tools, and everyone will have their own. Some of them quite miniature. More importantly, I think it's a habit of mind. If we can be prepared for collective adventure questions, such as the ones we talked to today. Can we go down this way? Is it okay to dig up a rock? And importantly, are we going to go back? Saying yes, I believe, more often may move us forward to a culture of trust, generosity of spirit, and a stronger sense of community. If saying yes leads us to those things, then I'm in. And may we all have the strength and the wherewithal to do our part in that direction. Thank you very much.